Hello, everyone from Zoomland and such. It's Coach Sandra here with Conversations with Sandra. And today I'm really thrilled to have with me Kellan Fluckiger. Now, I'm helping him, and you can too, reach 300 million people. We were fellow speakers at the Thrive Summit with the Alicia and Jonathan Decker earlier this year. And I was so taken with Kellan, and he's been gracious enough to come and have a conversation with me. I'm so looking forward to this. So Kellan, tell us a little bit about yourself, because we have both had amazing career path. Just yours has had a whole lot more fireworks with it.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. First of all, I want to honor you because putting together a show of any kind, podcast, live show, radio show, television show, whatever it is, it's a labor of love. There's a lot of work, and people think somehow because you have a show, a bunch of automatic stuff happens, and there's a lot of work. So I want to honor you for how you are choosing to add good to the world and how you are choosing to spread light, love, hope, possibility, and all those wonder words that we throw around, and you're doing that. And I want to honor you for that. So thanks for having me.
And you're giving me goosebumps with that. Thank you so much.
Because you are just welcome. I mean it with all my heart.
I mean, when I reach out to people, it's really for the whole idea to be yourself and let yourself be enough. And I've done that battle, and I'm so thrilled that you're seeing the result at the other end here a little bit. Thanks, Kellan.
You betcha. You betcha. It's wonderful. And, we hear all that stuff. Be authentic and be yourself. And it sounds like some kind of a, woo-woo noise. But the truth is, if you try to be somebody else, you're not very powerful. You're not very successful. And if you truly take the time to explore what the gifts and talents you have are, so you can be that the very best you can, you'll find that you have a lot to offer. And if you choose not to be afraid of it or to get weirded out by it, you can really make a difference and make a good living while you're doing it.
That's what I'm looking forward to, because I've been 40 years in the financial world and 30 years Toastmasters, 20 years. I was just back in prison again last night. And thus the whole idea of the journey is so exciting for me, that when both of us get people looking at their life as an adventure, it's amazing. Now, you have decades of leadership in the corporate world, which is probably the same thing that all of us struggle with. Your corporate world was really something in it. Tell us a little bit about that corporate world.
Well, I had a 30-year summer job. And I define summer jobs as those things we do, like when you went to college, you delivered pizza, and so you had a summer job. And when I was in college, I tutored math, and and I've taught piano. There's all kinds of things that we do that we don't necessarily think are going to be our meaningful career. And I ended up getting involved in the energy industry, electricity and deregulation and that sort of stuff. And I did it really well, and I made a lot of money, and I had some high-powered positions in both the United States and Canada. And I just kept doing it, and it wasn't aligned with the gifts and talents. I was able to do it well, and so I made good money, and achieved prominence, but my life was not happy because I wasn't using the gifts and talents which I have. And I had some baggage from my childhood and struggled with a lot of self-sabotage and depression and that sort of not good enough disease. Mm-hmm. And that went on for decades. And finally, things all ended after 30 years when in 2007, which is now 18 years ago, I started over. I had to leave all that. And so I say, well, I had a 30-year summer job, even though I made a lot of money. It was not tapping into that authenticity you talk about and being our true selves and spreading what we have to spread. And in the last 18 years, I've been able to do that, to tap it, to learn it, to find it, and to just have the most fun I've ever had in my life in terms of living how I'm able to do that now. So that's a little... Yeah, I had a big corporate history, and I think of it as a 30-year summer job.
It's amazing how many decades it can take us, how many decades it takes us to figure out we're stuck or in trouble, then how long it takes us to admit it and be aware of it. First, be aware of it. Secondly, admit it and say, oh, how could I have done that? and then go through all the shame and the guilt of being so stupid or feeling so out of it, to say, okay, enough of that. I'm going to do something. And then the healing journey starts. And it's not overnight. I don't know how many people have said to me, Sandra, I want some of what you've got. And the latest term I was hearing was, are you ready to did what I did?
You know, I heard a story once about a pianist, and I'm a pianist, a musician. I have played the piano since I was a kid. And there was a fabulous pianist that played some, concert or whatever, and some adoring fan came up to him afterwards and said, "Oh, that was just astounding and amazing. Oh, I'd give my life to be able to play like you do." And the guy looked at him and said, "I did."
That's true. That's true.
Amen. Hallelujah. End of story.
When we start down that path of healing, when we take on that most precious journey that we can ever do in all of our life, then we are consumed with it. And so some people are going to come and go in and out of our lives, but we have to learn that we have to be true to ourselves. You had really quite the journey, bigger than mine.
Well, it's not a contest. What I
No,
know,
it's not a contest.
what I know, here's what I know. I know that everybody was created by the divine, and you can define the divine however you want. We all feel that yearning, and we all know it. Sometimes we want to deny it. Sometimes we want to pretend it away. Sometimes we get mad and scream at the sky. How come all this bad stuff happens to me? But somewhere inside, we know that there's truth to that. And we can ignore that, or we can at some point decide to lean into it and explore what it can mean for us. And the minute we decide we're going to go explore that, then the opportunity opens up and things change meaning. And we stop defining things by these externalities. Mm-hmm. We start exploring what really matters. And it isn't the opinions of others, and it isn't the material things, the house, the car, the cash. We all need money to live. I'm not pretending we can go starve on an island. But the level of priority that we put on things is so warped and shaped by this sort of constant battle for trying to prove something in a game we don't even want to play.
And life is a game. When I finally got to relaxing out of all the pain and looking around, and then the whole terminology of the game of life, there's a board game of that, there's the book playing the game of life. When you really got to realize, and even Shakespeare way back when, all the world is a stage and each of us is actors, and we create our own play. And today, of course, we call creating our story. And if we don't like our story, we are now free to change our story. Like that whole process of understanding choices and decisions and making a new choice and making that choice work or not, but not afraid to move on. You've had so many stories. I know we've both been to clinical depression, which I say to hell and back in a handbasket. But what was your journey?
Well, I was raised in a religious, very, very strict sort of religious environment that employed discipline that today would be felony child abuse. We would have been removed from the home, that sort of thing. And it left me, and my parents were trying to do good, make me be good and all that stuff. So I'm not upset, and that forgiveness has long since taken place. But what it left me with is believing that I was not good enough and never would be. And secondarily, that my whole life really needed to be dedicated to prove to my mom, principally, that I was approved, and, get the stamp of approved. On my forehead. And so I left home at 17 and spent the next 35 years, from 17 to 52, trying to prove that I was okay. And doing it in the way that I believed would impress or be approved by her. And that didn't include music, because musical stuff, I grew up in San Francisco in the rock and roll era, 60s and all that stuff. So that's all evil, and they're all luscious and bad. So music was bad. Only when I take the multiple intelligence test, the only one I score 100 on is musical intelligence. So it was not that and not this and not that. And so I chased the corporate path. But because it was such a conflict, I created and destroyed 3 careers. So I got to executive positions and then trashed it. and did it again and did it again. And
What do you mean trashed? What's that mean?
I took behaviors that got me fired, lost jobs, like did things of self-sabotage, stupid things, because I was suffering such pain. And I didn't know exactly what was going on at the time. At the same time, I trashed 3 marriages.
Oh,
so
my.
I was married and divorced 3 times. I ruined 3 careers by taking, peripheral, sometimes actions, crazy actions. And I ended up with terrible addiction problems. At one point, I was a $3,000 a week cocaine addict, just like levels of absolute extreme. So when you say extreme, it is like extreme, like you could make a movie out of it. And so I was on the front, it was like, whoa, this guy's so successful. He has everything. And I did, money and house, cars, and my life was miserable. And so I was living in a world of denial and self-sabotage behind the scenes and self-medicating with all kinds of drugs and alcohol. And the consequence, trash relationships and jobs and everything else. And that went on for 35 years until I was 52 in 2007. And it was just the same roller coaster. And the details I wrote in a book called Tightrope of Depression. And so I'm not going to repeat them all here, but they're terrible. Yes. And they're just like a movie. You'd see in a movie, they like, whoa, the great life. And then behind the scenes, it's like, wow, that. And I lived that life, and it was a disaster. And I attempted suicide twice. I mean, It was that extreme.
I always knew I had my feet on the Great Canadian Shield. Even when I was in the worst of my depression, the doctor said, "Oh, you're in a depression." Oh, I didn't know. Who else had that in your family?
Right.
But I always could look down. I couldn't see my feet. Couldn't see my feet through the fog and the mist. But I could feel them on that Great Canadian Shield. And that was always positive for me. I never went beyond that point, which is amazing. And I have been around people who have said they're going to do suicide, and 1 or 2 were successful in it. And it's awful, awful, awful for everyone who's left behind.
I tried, and God wasn't having any of it. It should have worked. I should have been dead more than once, and it wasn't going to happen. And finally, in August of 2007, I had a wake-up call. It's a divine intervention, but that it's really an invitation to consider, a new path, to radically, not marginally, but radically change directions. And finally, we all feel those nudges all of our lives. And finally, I said, okay, I don't know where this goes. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm done. And I walked away from millions of dollars of contracts as a big shot, and at the same time, a functioning addict, and just sort of walked away from everything and said, okay, here we go. And that was just the beginning of a path of healing and recovery. I had to go do the work. Mm-hmm. The divine invitation or intervention didn't fix anything. It just finally woke me up.
Yeah. And that's really something, isn't it? The moment that you finally peel some of the scales away. To me, peeling the scales away, or like peeling that onion, is a lifetime. When I go across the veil, I'm kind of believing I'll still be doing more work on the other side. This is just a little speck in eternity. And I think, we all feel those nudges. We all feel those intuitions and inspirations to do things. And sometimes we pay attention. A lot of time we ignore them and don't trust them. And I think they just get louder and louder, so that there will never be any excuse for us if we choose to ignore them all the time. Mine was so loud. I'll just tell the story. I got home on a Friday night in August of 2007. I was at the height of another career. I was making so much money that my $3,000 a week habit didn't matter. Wow.
I was a single dad. I had 4 of my 10 children living with me at the time. And I was, paid for whatever, but I was not very good at being a dad. But anyway, I came home on a Friday night and I was going to go out and party for the weekend. And for some reason, I had this urge to turn on the television. And that doesn't sound like anything, except I didn't watch TV. I mean, I'd bought the biggest, coolest stuff because I had 4 teenagers in the house and we were the party house. So all the friends came over and everything. And I picked up the remote and realized I didn't know how to turn it on. So I had to ask one of my daughters, my 16-year-old daughter, she punched a button, threw the remote at me, dipweed. And it landed on a program, which I don't know if it's on anymore, but it was a reality TV show called Intervention, which is a show about, a show about families that stage interventions for busted loved ones. And the protagonist was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. And so, me, right? So I watched about 10 minutes of my life on the show and thought, I'm not watching this crap. So I turned it off and went and did some stuff and got ready to leave. And I just had this irrepressible urge to turn it on again. So this to my new house, so I did. And the program started over. And I didn't have a DVR and it wasn't on the schedule. And I understand it can't do that, but it did. So I thought, okay, it freaked me out. So I watched the program for half an hour. And after it was over, it just freaked me out enough that I didn't go out to party. I went to bed. So when I went to bed, I went to hell. Okay. And what I mean by that is I went somewhere out of body. I was in a big theater, dark, and I could see scenes on the stage. And the scenes were all out of my life, and they were all focused on suffering. The suffering that had been inflicted on me as a kid growing up, and up to and including all the suffering I had inflicted on everybody else as an addict and a lousy dad and a liar and everything else that I had been. And my experience in watching that was so intense, it was unbearable. And it went on and on and on and on. And after a long time, a voice that was a little bit behind me, it was actually on my right, behind me, I heard a voice very distinctly say, "It is enough." I woke up and I was completely disoriented for 3 reasons. 1, I was all twisted around in my bed. 2, the bed sheets were so wet, you could wring them out. And I'm assuming that was just the intensity of the experience, and I can't even imagine that you could sweat that much. But the real reason was the sun was shining in the windows and the windows faced west. And I got up and realized it was 5:00 Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere for about 18 hours. Wow. And I sat up and just started thinking about what I had just seen and heard. And I just decided, okay, I'm done. I'm done. So I threw away about $1,000 worth of drugs I had laying around, because I always did. And I quit cold turkey that day. And that was part 1, because that got me sober. But it didn't do anything about how I got there, which was the mental health and all the bustedness. Well, that wasn't the rest. I mean, the rest of it, that was part 1. So that was the first shoe. And the second shoe dropped on Monday. So I went back to work knowing that I had to start over and get away, but I didn't have any idea where to start, what to do, how to do anything. And in the position that I had, I had a very powerful position, and I made decisions that affected other companies, sometimes to the tune of billions of dollars. And so I got lots of be nice to Kellan stuff, right? Tickets, free tickets to this and expensive bottles of booze, not bribes, but just be nice to Kellan stuff. Yeah. So, and one of the things I got was a pair of tickets to see a Yo-Yo Ma concert. And if you know classical music, you know who that is. And if you don't, you don't. But classical music, that's like, oh. So I'm like, I'm going, but I don't have anybody to take because, I'm not, no. And so I asked in the groups that I managed who likes classical music. And a woman in one of the groups said, well, I do. And I asked her, have I ever given you anything before? And she said, no. I said, okay, fine. See you there. So I gave her the ticket. The concert was 2-3 weeks later. And so we met at the venue. And as of that night, now I'm 2.5 weeks stone cold sober, right?
Stone cold, unstoned.
Yeah, unstoned, like sober, right? And so we show up. Concert was amazing, spectacular. And halfway through, and of course the seats were together, but we didn't come together. I had this feeling come over me that I recognized from, 2-3 weeks before. And I heard this voice say to me, you need to marry this woman. And I said, you are insane. I said, I have screwed that up 3 times. I don't know how to do this. I'm exactly 2.5 weeks sober. This is not happening. And so later that night, we were backstage passes. They were like $1,000 tickets, the concert, backstage passes, tickets to the reception, et cetera, et cetera. So we're backstage. And the voice came back to me and said, and you need to tell her tonight.
Oh.
And I went crazy. I thought, well, there's a few problems with that. First of all, I don't actually know her well enough to know whether or not she has a relationship. Like, I didn't think she was married, but I don't know. I don't know her that well. And number two, she could like have me arrested or something for harassment or whatever. Said, this is not happening. And you don't win those arguments. So I did, and it was weird, and it went about like you would have expected. Are you crazy? And she left. But the good news was she wasn't in a relationship, which I didn't know, and she didn't call the cops or HR or whatever. And over the next 3 weeks, so we're now into October, she had her own set of experiences. And about that time, I walked away from millions of dollars of contracts. She resigned from her position and quit everything she'd been doing. We walked off into the sunset on the strength of that kind of intuition. And we've now been married 17 and a half years. I mean, that happened in October. We got married in December. I mean, it was like, we're doing this. And here's the interesting thing. She was literally the divine, a being, a divine angel. She's the most holy being I've ever known, who was sent to help me learn how to be a person, how to tell the truth, how to have a friend, how to be a friend, things that I had never learned, despite having been married 3 times. So those two events were the invitation for me to, because my family had disowned me. I was alone. I had nothing to help me start to get the help I need, go see shrinks, start to do things I'd never done, to be vulnerable, to start a healing journey. And in the process of doing that, I spent 3 years intense work just trying to get my own shit together. And then I realized in all the work that I was doing that what had been happening was valuable and I could help others with this. And so that's when I began to write books and began to be an author and decided I wanted to coach and do the things that I do now, all because of what I had been learning. And now we're moving, we've moved now.
I just want to take a moment so that the audience understands this is what we call a rebirth. If you've ever heard of a rebirth, that aha, that intensity that says it's enough, I'm going. Now you're birthed out new with all your messes, and you're birthed into taking it apart to fix it instead of the other way where we came in perfect and between us all we got it screwed up. This is the rebirth to start and clean up. And you cleaned up good, Kellan.
Well, I've been working on it for 17 and a half years.
I know, me too.
All right. So that's the story of the divine intervention. And it was miraculous and it happened. And it didn't fix anything. It was an invitation. And the point of this is to understand that even when those events happen, I could just as easily have got up that day and thought it was crazy and gotten high and thought it was nuts. I decided to do something different. And it is always going to be the choice to accept the invitation. And it might come, I'm convinced mine was as loud as it was because I'd ignored 1,000 others. And so I needed a crane falling on my head to wake up. But you feel those.
My story paralleled along, except my journey was through Al-Anon. Mm-hmm. And I was so broken and empty-handed. And I think that's what I had to be in order to even go and grasp anything. I was going to probably 5 meetings a week. And mm-hmm. all I would get out of a meeting, I would come home with one word. And the beautiful book, Courage to Change, had a part in the back that you picked out your topic and it showed you all the pages that talked about it. So mm-hmm. if you got hope, I went to the back, looked up everything on hope and went through that. And I'd go to sleep. And in the morning, I would have some answers. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. It was just like that. And it was at Al-Anon that I understood I had choices. I didn't know I had choices. Smart woman, school teacher, honors, all, I always stayed a little below honors, so I didn't have to work too hard to get to the if 80 was it, I had a 79. But, to understand choices, I didn't know I had choices. That gave me the strength to then walk into the divorce that had to occur.
You bet. You bet.
And then, from choices to responsibility, from responsibility, I am responsible. You start peeling all of that away. It is huge. I'm still peeling. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I came across learned helplessness. And you said, oh, I just did a podcast on that. For my audience, in case you don't know, Kellan is in the top 5% of podcasts worldwide?
Yes.
Worldwide. And his podcasts are amazing. I don't know if he ever started as simply as the interview I'm doing today. But this is...
You know how they started? When COVID hit 5 years ago in February or whatever it was of 2020, and the first word lockdown was, spoken, and people were saying, wow, the air's clear and all that stuff in the world and all those things that got said.
Yeah.
Somebody called my wife. Oh, you know what? I didn't tell you the most fun part about that whole divine intervention is her name is Joy. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Anyway, somebody called Joy and asked, because they were like, oh, we're going to do lockdown. I guess they were looking for some inspiration or whatever, and said, does Kellan have a podcast? And we didn't, but she said yes. So she came downstairs and said, we have a podcast. And so I thought, okay. And I decided, what could I do to add good to the world in this, beginning of that thing? And, we're sitting here wondering, is this the end of the world or what? And so I thought, okay, your ultimate life. And so to start with, I did 15 minutes a day. And we did that through 600 episodes. And then we went to twice a week with longer episodes of 30 to 45 minutes. And now we're just about at 1,000. But the idea is just to assure you that you create your life and that you can abdicate that or you can own it. And it's about creating a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy by serving with your gifts and talents. So that's what started it. And we've been going ever since. And we're just about to 1,000, and we'll just keep going because I have fun.
And I did little mini lives every day when COVID arrived.
Mm-hmm.
I think I started in January 21. I did it every day, Monday to Friday, for 3 years.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. And so they were little 5 to 10 minute videos.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did make a difference. But I certainly became a Zoomer, even though the newest generation are called Zoomers.
Right.
I think I joined them. I live on Zoom, and how would we have ever met without...
Well, what's funny is I was using Zoom before the pandemic because I used to use Google Hangouts, which is now turned into Google Meet. And then when Zoom came along, it was like everything that Google Hangouts should have been. There was all kinds of things that didn't work very well. But anyway, so I started using Zoom for calls and coaching and stuff. And so when COVID hit and it was all these people, Zoom, just took off like whatever. Yeah. I had already, I was blessed to already be familiar with it and being able to use it then. But yeah, that's amazing. And you did a lot of good, I'm sure, with 3 years worth of encouragement that you offered to people.
And I keep doing it a little bit. And now, guess where I am? Kellan has got me writing my own book, following his book.
Well, you're one of the people that I meet regularly, but I as I listened to you and we got acquainted, I listened and heard your story, how much good you do serving in prisons and how much love you share, encouraging people to take ownership of their life. And I wanted to tell your story, and you've been on my show. And then I heard more and I thought, there's a lot more that you can do if you want to. So after I'd written 7 or 8 books, I dawned on me, like everything else that I was doing, I had a system that worked well. And so then I wrote the book about how to do that because people kept asking, how do you write so many books? So I started mapping out the system that I used. And now I help people tell their stories, write their books, and create products and services to serve out of their life story. And I was really impressed and excited about your level of commitment, love, and service that you're doing and continue to offer in the world. And so, yeah, I'm honored to have you on the journey of getting yours ready and out in the world.
And I'm so excited because in 6 months, I'll have a book on here with the Compassionate Queen of Straight Talk. And I'm thinking the photograph I have of reaching into the garbage and turn out the trash might be a good cover.
It'll come out of it as you write, but it's wonderful. Here's the key, and I'm talking to you, but your audience.
Yes.
The key is just tell the truth.
Always.
Tell the truth. People ask me, I just had a call with a client, and this happens often. They ask me, how do I handle this situation? And they'll outline some difficult thing for them that feels like it's squirmy or difficult, or they're going to offend somebody, or whatever the things are. And I listen to the whole thing. And my answer's not to be glib, but it's always the same. Just tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And let me give you some ideas about how to tell the truth that are likely to land well and get you where you're trying to go. And so it's not about shading or favoring. It's about being truly in love and engaging for the good, and then just tell the truth. And that carries so much power instead of trying to dance.
Scary, I mean, when I finally recognized and claimed it, because I've always been straight talk, always.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the things that impressed me when you said, I'm the straight talk coach. I thought, I like this lady already.
But, I offended people. I wasn't going to scare them or offend them until finally somebody explained, no, you're not scaring or offending. They don't know what to do with the truth. They've not heard the truth. They've not spoken their own truth. And it's so freeing when you don't have to worry about what you said. Somebody will say, oh, you said, oh yeah, really? Okay. I don't remember saying that, because I'm like you, I talk a lot. But I don't worry about what comes out of my mouth. If something has been misunderstood, I'm happy to take it back, and not take it back, but explain it or expand it on, or apologize and clean up from it if I did something offensive. But to be able to claim yourself, my feet are on the ground. I'm okay. I live in a 500 square apartment in my own home. People say, how can you do that? Well, for that one visitor I might get in a year that needs a hotel, I'll pay for the hotel. I don't need a big house. It doesn't matter. Right. I go out in the world. I've done a lot of travel, and it's beautiful. And I come home to my nest. This is my nest. I don't need a big house. I don't need it.
Well, I love your straight talk and the truth piece. I'm reminded of a quote that was attributed to Mark Twain. I don't know. I didn't do any research, but it said, tell the truth. There's less to remember.
Less to remember. When somebody asks me, my visual observations are always terrible. Usually terrible. My intuitive ones are pretty good. But they'll say, what color was that house? Oh yeah, stop over at the yellowish house. They get there and it's green, like, give it up.
Right.
It wasn't an untruth. I just have to accept. I'm not very observant when it comes to describing, but I am a good leader. And I know leadership is what came out for you. Only you went from leadership in the corporate world, and now you've gone to leadership in your own life and sharing that out into the world. There's a huge difference in that.
That's a profound observation that you've made, because when I first started, I started working on healing myself and getting medical help and counselors and all the kind of stuff you have to do. And you spent 50 years beating yourself up. And then when I decided, well, what can I do with this? How can I serve? And I thought, well, maybe I'll be a coach. Well, what is that? So I worked on figuring that out and doing that. And when I first started, as a leader, as a corporate leader, you're in charge of stuff. And so you have authority and you tell people to do stuff, and they do. And you have different departments and hundreds of people, blah, blah, blah. And when you are trying to be a leader of others that you don't have any authority over, and you need to lead by energy and by example, the foundational piece is what you just said, which is you have to lead yourself. And it has to be visible and obvious to those who are around you, not because of what you say, but because of who you're being, that the things you are teaching and expressing and sharing are true and obviously true in your own life because of your self-leadership. When that is true, Then you become a beacon of light, and people are drawn to you and want to follow because you are an example of leadership and truth.
You know, the best place to learn leadership is be a volunteer. Organize volunteers. No paycheck, no money, no bribery available, nothing. And I find that to be my truth. When I go to prison, it even costs me money. It's not that I don't get paid. It costs me money to drive down there. But you know, I went to that meeting last night, and there were probably 35 guys in the room. And they were having so much fun, laughing and telling stories and supporting each other. The camaraderie that comes together when I put a group together is the community that they learn. And you go in, there was one fellow who had said, Sandra, if I were you, if I knew what I know, I wouldn't be in here. You know, there's people in here that do whatever they needed to do to you to get what they wanted. And I said, yeah, I kind of know that, but I'm pretty sure more of you love me than not, and you'd look after me. And so I sat down beside another fellow who had been in many of the programs, and I said, what do you think? You'd look after me, wouldn't you? Have trouble? You were afraid of you. So I have my gravitas, even in all my fun. And I think that's from just the being. You know, we can do what we want, but if we're not being first, where do we go with that?
You made a really important and true point. Truth carries its own power. And when you are a beacon of light and truth, you carry power, period. And so the fact that he said that was maybe a glib expression, but it's the truth. And everyone in the room knows that it's the truth. And you have the ability to speak and be and carry authority and love and power because of the straight talk and the truth. And that is absolutely true all the time, only always.
That's right. And you know, when it comes to prison, I never had to question why I could go into prison, because so many people say, why would you go and waste your time on those? Well, Kellan, you and I could have been in prison there by the grace of God for any of us.
I should have been.
Know what it is. The one man he was buddied up with another inmate, brilliant, classical musician, violin.
Wow.
Oh, unbelievable. And he was with another fellow just as smart and making a little bit of glib comments, hurting some of the people that were doing, you know, they were struggling with their depression, but they were still there doing their job and catching. And I can't take them off to another space and speak to them. I have to command what's going to happen right there. So I had to speak to the two smart fellows in front of the whole crowd of inmates and get them settled down, which they did. And he later wrote a testimonial for me, and I have the letter still. And he said, I wondered when I came, you know, to this prison, and here was this funny woman with her pink in her hair, and what's she going to teach me? Well, I was going to go anyhow, so he showed up at the meetings. And he said, but this woman, there was something about her, and when I needed to be told, she came with gravitas. I had to come home and look that one up. I thought it was gravity, but I had to look up gravitas. I've got gravitas.
Well, you've earned it, and you're carrying it as a conduit of power, of truth, and that's fabulous of the work that you're doing.
I suspect, what else would you like to say to the audience before we?
So, you know, I have a couple of things. I want you to know that it doesn't matter what has come before. You matter now.
Yes.
And you can have big impact now. If you choose a purpose that you want to line yourself up with, you lead yourself, and you can have power and make a difference now. I don't care where you've been. I don't care what's happened before. And I mean that with all my heart. And you don't know all the details of my story, you know some smattering, and it doesn't matter. What I know doesn't matter what's come before. You matter now, and you can have a big impact. You have to decide it. You have to do the work. So that's number one. Number two is that love is the power and substance that holds the universe together. Fear and hate is divisive and pushes things apart. All you have to do is look around in groups and families and everything else. Love is attractive, and it will always win. So when you're looking for how do I put myself together, no matter how broken you have been or are right now, the first step is to learn to love yourself, even though you've made mistakes. There's a Shakespeare play where there's a story about two brothers, and the older brother hated the younger brother because the younger brother was always doing good and people liked him and he was successful and everything. And the older brother kept trying to kill his younger brother, right? Typical Shakespeare. And one day the older brother got in trouble, life difficult situation, and the younger brother came and saved him. And that profoundly affected the older brother, and he changed completely. And later in the play, there was a couple of women that were talking to him and said, "You've changed completely. You used to try to kill him and hate him. What's going on?" And he said very simply, "'Twas I, 'tis not I." And that, in typical Shakespeare fashion, that is you. You decide, today I'm this. And you can start loving yourself now, because you can't love anybody else more than you love yourself. So it's never too late. Make choices to create your life. Love yourself, pick a path, and stay on the path. And you will get to your destination. It's going to be bumpy. It's going to be rocky. Believe me, I've am on that road. But you're worth it.
What an adventure.
Important.
What an adventure. You know, as soon as we switch it around from, oh God, I got to do that, I got to do that. Hey, I get there, I get there, I get there. It's that jumping into I call it about the comfort zone. Here we are with the comfort zone. Pretty soon we get a little bored with that and we go tap, 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 and get that expanded out a little bit. And I used to think, well, maybe the comfort zone gets bigger. And then I thought there's a lot of that stuff that I don't want to keep. So I decided there was an exhaust out there. In with the good, out with the
I love it. Great explanation. Great visual. You can dump it out and put new stuff in. And the last thing I'll share with you is you are the architect of your life. I realize that you may have had crap happen to you. I realize that things may have been inflicted on you that aren't fair, that are unjust, that you didn't ask for. And I freely admit that. What we don't have to do is to allow that to continue to control us. Whatever happened, happened. Well, whoever did whatever they did, including you, did. And you can change today, incrementally if necessary, but you can start now and take sovereign ownership of your life. And even if you changed 1% today, in 100 days, that's 100%. It accumulates quickly, and the attitude and feeling changes when you decide to exercise self-leadership and own your life.
Thank you so much. I think everyone knows how to get a hold of me if they want to learn to speak up. But how do they get hold of you, Kellan?
Well, you know, when you have a weird name like Kellan Fluckiger, you can't hide. So if you spell my name right, Kellan, F like Frank, Luckiger. Amazon with all the books, all the socials, website, my own name. I only had to pay $2 for it. Nobody else wanted it. So you know, I can't hide, and you can find me, and I'd be delighted to get to know you, to see what I can do to serve you and help you add good to the world.
Thank you so much, Kellan, for being with us today. Conversations with Sandra. I love conversations, and I hope that we will be producing lots of good in the world. We've spread it a little bit further on your 300 million.
We have, and thanks for having me.